All right. Hi, friends. This is Danielle. I am excited to show you all the wonderful things about hand embroidery. So I'm filming a tutorial so you know what to do. And I hope you enjoy. So first things first, in your kit, you'll have an embroidery hoop, a stick and stitch sticker. Say that 3 times fast. You'll also have some fabric, but you can do these on anything. So feel free to do them on your own hats or sweatshirts or whatever you'd like to put them on. I just threw that in here just in case you'd prefer to give it a go on here first. You'll also have some needles and of course some thread. Yours will be in the actual spools. I just have mine on these for convenience since I use mine a lot. So to get started, you'll need to put your embroidery hoop on whatever you're working on. So since I'm working on this piece of fabric here, I'm going to put that on the back of my embroidery hoop here. Let me go on this side actually. And then I'm going to put the top part right over the top. Once you do that, you can just tighten it up on the top and then you'll be ready to get started. Let me do that real quick. You do want to try to get this as tight as you can. Generally, more tension on your fabric makes your life easier later. All right, so my hoop is ready to go. I'm going to be doing this little heart for our example today. So I am going to take this off the backing and stick it down. Maybe. There we go. Now this is a dissolvable fabric. So once you're done with all of your stitches, you'll rinse the whole thing under cold water and this paper will disappear. You'll just let it air dry after that and then it's gone forever and you don't need your guide anymore. All right, so next thing is getting your thread ready and learning all of the stitches that you'll be doing. So I'm going to do the majority of my heart in this red color, the super bright red. And I'm going to take about an arm's length or a little bit longer of that piece of thread. We're going to pull out a big length and chop it off. And then a fun thing about embroidery is that most of the time you're not using this whole thickness of thread. So if you look at it closely, you'll see that it's actually made up of 6 strings. And when you're first getting started in embroidery, it's recommended that you start with just 3 out of the 6 strings. So I'm going to split this piece of string that I just chopped off into 2 pieces. All right, so I have my piece split and this one has 3 strands to it. Next, I'm going to thread my needle. So I'm going to try to make the end of this piece of thread as pointy as possible. And then I'm going to work on getting it through the eye of this needle. If you're having trouble, you can also snip the end. Sometimes that helps just make all 3 of those little strands the same length and make it a bit pointier so you don't have any straggly bits that get in your way. Let's see, there we go. So I have it threaded and I'm going to pull through a good bit of this thread. That's called your tail. So you'll just have that dangling behind as you're working. And then the main body of your thread will be the one going in and out of your fabric. At the very end of that, I'm going to tie a small knot. So I'm just doing a little loop knot where you make a loop and thread it through. And I just did that twice here. You can do more or less depending on the size of what you're working on. Maybe I'll do a third just to be extra secure. So I have a little knot in the end of my thread. All right, so we have our needle ready to go, and we have our pattern that we're about to follow. So I am going to show you the different kinds of stitches that you need to accomplish something like this. So the first one is just going to be a back stitch. So first thing, I come through the back of my fabric and go into the pattern here. I am going right up against the edge of the area that I want to be this red color and pulling your thread all the way through until you get down to your knot. All right, so that is pulled all the way through. And then I'm going to follow the line that I'm on. You'll notice that I didn't start right in the corner. I gave myself a little bit of space. I'm going to go right into that corner now so that I'm creating my first stitch. All right, there's the first stitch. Now with the back stitch, you are moving in a forward direction, but your stitches are coming up and going backwards. That's why it's called a back stitch. So I'm going to move up just a little bit further. I'm going to go all the way through and then go backwards into the spot where my last stitch was. Just like that. There we go. So that is a back stitch, and usually when you're doing an embroidery piece that has a full piece of color, I like to do a back stitch around the whole area first. That way when you fill it in, you have a nice crisp edge to go off of. This is also a great way to do outlines, but I'll show you another stitch to make it just a little bit fancier when you're doing your outlines too. So I think I'm going to speed through doing the outline here, and then we'll go on to our next stitch. All right, I have my outline of my main red part done here. I still have some string left, so I'm going to continue on to the next stitch with my current string. Once I get to the end of this one, I'll show you how to tie off when you do run out of length to go to your next string. But for now, let's dive into the next one. So this next stitch is called a satin stitch. So this is how you fill in large areas in one solid color, but make sure that your stitches are still pretty secure. So the first thing is that I'm going to come up through the back of my piece here. There we go. Really, a satin stitch is a lot of just what you did with the back stitch, but all together and all in one wide area. So you're going to be using that back stitch as a guide for the edges of your piece. So you'll actually go over the back stitch when you're putting in your satin stitches. So since I've come through here, I'm going to go over my back stitch to put in my first satin stitch. Next, I'm going to come up just nearby that first stitch that I did. I do recommend to not do them all in a straight line, vary them a bit, and it will help blend everything together nicely. Next, I'm going back over my back stitch. That's going to be the edge of this area. And then I'm just repeating that over and over again to fill in the space. Again, I'm varying my stitches so that they're not all the same length. That way when I come up again later, things will be blended a bit better than if they were all straight. Here we go. The great thing about satin stitches is that they are very forgiving and super handy. So I've gotten my first knot here, and I'm going to show you how to get these out because as you're learning, they will happen a lot. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my string off of my needle. So I'm removing my needle and I'm going to pull this through so that all of my string is on one side of my piece. These little knots that have a little loop in them are often just because your thread got a little crazy and wrapped around itself. So the easiest thing to do here is to find that little knot and get your head of your needle in there and give it a good tug on either side of the string. Usually one of those sides will loosen everything up and it'll pop right out. Now we are all set with our knot here, all sorted, so I can thread back onto my needle and get back to my satin stitches. Let's get her threaded back. There we go. Took me a minute, but I'm threaded back on. I've got my tail, and I'm good to go. Gonna make sure that there's nothing back here that is catching for me. Sometimes that can be the culprit in getting knots. Also, the back of your piece is okay to be a little messy. I always say that the back of my piece is nobody's business but my own, so no worries what's going on back there. All right, back to satin stitches. Again, I am varying my loose end and making sure that I'm aligned on my back stitch here. That'll give you a nice clean edge and a blended middle. I'm going to go ahead and come up to another row of satin stitches so that you can see how they blend together. So on this next row, I'm varying pretty broadly, and I'm varying how they align with the set of stitches below them. So I have plenty of gaps to stitch in because I varied those first stitches. So I'm just going back through and filling in those areas with different sized stitches in here. You'll see as you go that it starts to feel pretty blended. If you notice a spot that feels like there's a hard edge, you can always throw a stitch in the middle of it when you're doing a satin stitch. And that will blend it all together and fill in that area. All right, I'm going to go through and fill in these areas and come back with the next stitch. All right, I have those satin stitches done for my light red side, and I'm going to repeat that back stitch and satin stitch step all over here on this shadow part. All right, I have that all done. Now I still have my string attached, so I'm going to show you how to tie off the end of a thread. So on the back here, you'll see I am still attached. There are two different ways that you can tie off your thread. So if this is going to be something that is going to hang on a wall or not be touched very often, one of the easiest things to do is thread your needle through several of your existing threads, just a couple times, just all over the piece, and then just snip the end and you're done. That's the quick and easy method to getting your thread secure, and it holds pretty well as things tighten up as more stitches are added. If this is something that's going on a piece of clothing or something that might be handled frequently or just something that you want to be extra secure, you can also tie a knot. So usually the way I do that is threading through a couple of these existing threads to create a loop. And then I'm going to put my needle right through that loop and wrap it just a couple times. After that, I'll continue my needle pulling through and then slowly but surely tie that knot as close as I can to the back of my piece. And there you have it. You can snip off your thread and then you are all set. All right, the last bit of filling in my heart here are these little white highlights that I have on the side. Since these are really tiny, I don't need to do a back stitch here. So I'm just going to fill these in with just a little bit of white thread. You'll also notice that I like all of my satin stitches to go the same direction. You can have some fun with that and try different directions for a different effect, but it does look really nice and neat when they're all the same direction as much as possible. So I'm just filling in this little highlight. And then I have a small circular highlight right above there that's really hard to see because I filled in with all of the red. But in that space, we're going to do a French knot. This is something fun that you can do on your pieces that are in your kit. It's a little bit more complex, so if you're nervous, don't worry about it. Just do some more satin stitches in there. But if you want to have some fun and give a French knot a go, I'll walk you through how to do those too. One more here, and then I'm going to do our French knot. All right, so first things first, you're going to come up where you want your French knot to be. I'm going to come up right here. And this is a little bit more complicated than the other things that we've done so far, but it's not too bad. You're going to take your thread that has come through from the back. I'm going to put my needle right against this right here. And then I'm going to wrap this thread around my needle. You can do 3 is a good starting place, or you can do more or less. But you'll just wrap your thread around your needle so you have a bunch of loops around there. Now keep a hold of your thread here because we are going to take the tip of our needle and go right back in where we came up the first time. You're going to keep a hold of this thread here so that you can keep those little loops that we created nice and taut. That'll give us a nice round knot. but we're going to push our needle through to the back while we're holding this thread taut. As it comes through, your loop that you've created is going to slowly close and tie off that knot that we've made. So it's coming right through, and you can let go right at the end and make yourself a nice little French knot circle. Fantastic. All right, so that is all of our insides filled in. We can totally stop here and it's super cute and done, but I'm also going to show you how to do an outline around the edge that is nice and smooth and filled in. So I'm going to tie this off, get some black thread, and then we'll get started on that. All right, I have my black thread ready to go on my needle, and now we're going to go through an outline. Like I said, not every piece needs one, but I want to show you how to do it just in case you feel like doing one. So the first part is something you already know how to do. We are just going to do a back stitch all the way around this piece in black. So I'm going to go through and add this back stitch all the way around the edges so that we have a black line that outlines our piece. Easy enough, right? So I'm going to go through and do this back stitch, and then once I'm all the way around, I'll come back for the next part. Here we go. All right, so we have our back stitch all the way around the heart now, and I would love to make this a little smoother than what a back stitch can give me. So to do a nice clean outline, there's a little bit of an addition that you can do to this stitch to make it nice and clean and flat. So I am turning my piece around so that I have my string and direction facing towards me. It's a little bit easier to manage that way. And I'm going to start running my needle underneath each of these stitches. So I have this first stitch in my back stitch here. And I'm going to take my needle and run it underneath that stitch so that I am threading in between there. This doesn't go through the fabric at all. It just goes through the stitch here. So when I pull that through, it'll be a little bit of a loop. And then I'm going to repeat that through each stitch, going in the same direction every time. So you'll see as I do these first few here, it really smooths out that line and makes it all the same width and nice and neat. So it's an extra stitch that you can add on to make sure that you have a clean outline. You can also use this in tons of other things. It's a great way to do lettering or to do pieces that are just outline only. You have lots of options, but all it is going through with a back stitch and then going through and creating loops on each of those stitches after the fact. So I'm going to go all the way around with these little loops, and then I'll come back and show you the final piece. I did want to stop about halfway through doing this outlining stitch to show you a little bit of how the difference is for this outline. So you see on this right side, I've gone through and made those loops, and I haven't quite yet done that on the left side. So it's a little bit thicker, it's a little bit smoother, and it just makes it slightly cleaner. I also wanted to note that if you have a particularly sharp area where looping around just doesn't quite work, you can always go back into your fabric and then come back up on the new side. That'll keep your corner nice and crisp, but also keep that clean outline look. So you have that as an option when you have a particularly pointy corner that you don't want to make too curvy by threading all of these little loops through. All right, back to it. All right, I've made it all the way around my little heart here. And to finish this off, now that I've gone all the way around, I'm just going to go right back into my fabric to get my thread back to the back, and then just tie it off however you'd prefer. So in this case, this is just an example, so I'm not going to do a knot this time. I'm just going to thread through a couple of my existing stitches to lock that into place, and then cut it off because I'm all done. There we go. All right, so those are the stitches that you can work with in the kit that you have. These are also just useful stitches to know how to do if you ever want to get into more embroidery in the future. Once your piece is all done, you can pull it out of the hoop. Remember that you tightened it very tightly, so it may take you a second to get it open. But crack that open, and then, like I said, the guide that you have in your stick and stitch can be washed off with water. So I'll rinse this underwater so this guide paper will go away, and then I'm all set. If you are putting this on something that you're planning on wearing, I do recommend that you do some iron-on fusible interfacing in the back. So I've sent in with your kit some of this for you. This is just like an iron-on protector for the back of your piece. You'll cut a little piece to size, and then you'll iron that onto the back. So let me pull a small little piece of this off here. I'm just cutting off a small piece of that fusible interfacing. I have my little piece here. You'll get your iron really hot based on whatever fabric you're using. Please don't melt any acrylic. But go to the correct iron setting for your particular fabric. You can stick this on and then iron it really well. If you're having trouble with getting it to stick, you can mist it slightly with just a little bit of water, and that should help activate that adhesive and get it on there for you. Again, be very careful if you're using synthetic fabrics. I don't want you to melt anything if you put this on the back there. So, but that will basically encase all of your threads on the back. That way you can wash it as normal and wear it without worrying about losing all of that hard work that you just did. And there you have it. That is your embroidery tutorial. I hope you enjoy the kit that you have and getting to try embroidery with me. Enjoy the holiday season, and I am always around if you have any questions or need any help with your projects. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and looking forward to another great year ahead. All right.